Oh, yeah. Gotta love the intro. Let's jump right to the fan shoutouts. This is Gridiron Lines. Gary McKenzie, your host, back once again. So today's fan shoutout goes to Dustin Wilson. And Dustin Wilson asks, what would you think about swapping Sneed and McDuffie's assignments, having Sneed and Reed on number one receiver, and then Thornhill helping over Williams and Watson with McDuffie on slot receiver, since he's smaller and quicker than Sneed, who can definitely handle the receivers, the taller receivers like Diggs and Devontae Adams. So thank you, Dustin, for your question. I thought this was an awesome ask. And what is my opinion on this? So if I'm Steve Spagnuolo, I basically think I want to use my tools the best in which they're made. So if I have a screwdriver, I'm going to use it to put some screws in. If I have a hammer, I'm going to use it for nails. I think that McDuffie, all his time in college and all the time he spent so far in the NFL, has been the majority. He spent the majority of that time on the outside, working the sidelines. Snead, on the other hand, has been an exceptional slot cornerback all through his time in Kansas City. So using the tools that Spagnuolo has at his disposal, I think it's in the Chiefs' best interest to keep using McDuffie on the outside because he's good at it, and to keep using Sneed in the slot. However, there are interesting things Spagnuolo can do where he sends Sneed on a blitz and he might move McDuffie on the inside. He might do some other things where he's doing some disguised coverages and McDuffie changes spots with Sneed. The good thing about these two players, they're both very talented, and McDuffie's smart enough to be able to play different positions, and I think he's good enough to do it too. So this just adds another wrinkle that Spagnuolo has at his disposal as far as disguising and mixing coverages to try to cause some confusion to the quarterback in the backfield. And that's what Spags likes to do. But speaking of Trent McDuffie, this tweet from Chiefs Hive, Trent McDuffie has been in coverage on 45 snaps in 2022, and he hasn't allowed a single reception. That's a heck of a start. Granted, he's done it against the Cardinals during week one, who had a decimated wide receiver core, and then the Titans last week in week nine, who, for lack of a better term, have an absolutely abysmal wide receiver group. So he's been broken in pretty gently. Next week, we're going to amp up the competition for McDuffie. He'll have Trevor Lawrence throwing the ball, and he'll have a little bit more competition, a little better players to have to try and defend. So I'm really excited to see what McDuffie does next week, and I think it's a good way to ramp him up heading into the Bengals game. So get him some good exposure to some pretty decent talent versus the Jaguars, and then next week when they play the Bengals, that's his time to show what he's got. And I, for one, am very strong on McDuffie, and I think he'll do the job. Let's take a little detour. So usually we go through grades, Coach Reed's grades, but as the season progresses, I had a plan to introduce some wrinkles, more viable data, and I can have more things to talk about. And so what I'm going to talk about this week is how does the Chiefs' 2022 offense stack up against all the offenses in the Patrick Mahomes era, focusing only on the first 8 games of the season. So the first 8 games in 2018 through 2022. Since we've reached the 8-game mark, I'm able to do this. So looking at the data and some numbers, the Chiefs' 2022 offense is strong in these areas. So they have the second best mark in total yards, second best mark in total touchdowns, the best mark in passing yards, the second best mark in passing touchdowns. In time of possession, they have the first. So this is the best they've done in regards to time of possession for the Chiefs during the Patrick Mahomes era. There's only 5 seasons to go from, and right now the Chiefs are possessing the ball 1 minute and 41 seconds on average, more than their opponents. All the other years in the Chiefs' history with Mahomes, they have not done a great job of owning the time of possession. I lend this to the fact that they have more of a ball control style offense that's not going to gash teams for 30 yards at a time. And we'll see that in the next slide. But they're more methodical, and it's a good methodical because this is one of the best Chief offenses we've seen with Mahomes. I'll give the verdict here in a couple slides, but in regards to third down conversion percentage, this is the second best mark they've had with Mahomes. Pressure percentage, they've been keeping him clean. This is the second best mark, keeping Mahomes clean. Looking at some things that have been problems for this group. So they're fourth out of those 5 years in terms of net passing yards per attempt at 7.1. That's still nothing to sneeze at. That's a pretty good mark. But you have to think that with the way they're moving the ball and the way their offense is configured, with guys like Travis Kelce and JuJu Smith-Schuster getting the lion's share of the targets, they're going to have a lower yards per passing attempt mark. That's just how it is. I don't think this is a bad thing, because if you can still matriculate the ball down the field, be accurate, and consistently move, then there's no problem there. They're fourth in rushing yards out of these 5 seasons with only 828. They're fourth in turnovers. Now, that might sound bad, like turnovers are a problem. That's not the case. The Chiefs have done a phenomenal job of taking care of the ball in Mahomes' 5 seasons, and particularly in the first 8 games. And the number one mark was in 2019 or 2020, when they only turned the ball over 5 times in the first 8 games. The next best mark was 7 turnovers in 2018 after 8 games. And then the mark after that is 2019, where they turned the ball over 8 times in 8 games. And then in 2022, they've turned the ball over 9 times. So they're right there at that cusp of the higher level taking care of the ball. So I don't think this is necessarily too bad of a mark for the Chiefs in terms of their first 8 games with Mahomes in 2022. But they're doing much better than last season. Last season, they had 19 turnovers in the first 8 games. What a mess. So then lastly, the air yards per pass attempt. So what is the average depth of target where Mahomes is throwing the ball? And that's 6.8 yards per pass attempt. So on average, Mahomes is throwing the ball in the air 6.8 yards. This is the lowest mark for the Chiefs by a decent margin. Last season in 2021 was their next worst mark in this regard, where they're getting 7.6 yards per depth, or 7.6 average depth of target yards. So it means they are not throwing the ball as far down the field. And that goes once again to the fact that they're using a more ball control style offense, shorter passes, and that's because of accumulation of things. One, obviously, they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. He did a great job of pushing the envelope, taking the top off the defense, getting deep pass plays thrown his way, and connecting on those and catching them. But also, it has to do with the fact that over the years, defensive coordinators have slowly tried to figure out what Mahomes doesn't like, and he's slowly learned and changed his style of play to go and just take what the defense gives him. The Chiefs' offense in 2022 is still the best offense in the NFL. So he's adapted, and he's still knocking the socks off NFL defenses, which has been just a true joy to watch Mahomes grow in this way. I've enjoyed it so much. So what is my verdict with the 2022 Chiefs offense so far, in the first 8 games of the season? I think this is the second best offense the Chiefs have had in Mahomes' 5 seasons as a starter with the Chiefs. 2018 beats them out, beats this season out, but 2018 will always have a special place in all of our hearts, because that was the year Mahomes exploded onto the scene. He threw for 50 passing touchdowns. I don't think he's going to hit that mark this year, but he could be well into the 40s. I think he's on pace for about 40, 45 passing touchdowns this year, which is an incredible mark. So I think this is the second best Chiefs offense, and they're better than they were last year with Tyreek Hill. They got better. So kudos to Brett Veach, kudos to Andy Reid, kudos to all the Chiefs offensive players for getting the Chiefs in this position where they're better. They're more efficient, and they're still number one in the offense. They're still the number one ranked offense in the NFL. So impressive to watch this team grow and change with Mahomes under the center, under the helm. And as long as he's the quarterback for the Chiefs, they're going to be in very, very good hands. Now, I'm changing the format for Coach Reid's grade. I used to spend a lot of time on it in the prior weeks, but now that I'm starting to jump into some more statistical numbers, now that we have more data for the season, I'm going to abbreviate Coach Reid's grade. So I'm going to talk about some things that I thought interesting in regard to the game. So this was a dogfight against the Tennessee Titans. Once again, reviewing Coach Reid's grade versus the Titans, his last week matchup. It was a total dogfight. The Chiefs got hit in the mouth. They did. The Titans came out swinging. They landed a few blows. And the Chiefs, as a team, they did not flinch. I have to give a ton of credit to the entire unit, the entire offense, the entire defense especially, for hanging in there, fighting and battling and winning a style of game that is not the style that they're accustomed to winning. They hung in there. They fought hard. They took a few punches and they kept rolling. So I was very impressed with the way the team came out and played. As far as their character and composure goes. They were trying to get under Kelsey's skin. They were trying to get under everyone's skin. They were grabbing, they were holding almost every pass play. I think that the Titans' strategy going into the game was, yeah, let's just hold every play. The refs aren't going to call a holding every single play. They would never do that. So let's get away with it. And that's exactly what it seemed like to do. Credit to the Titans and Mike Vrabel for having an outstanding game plan. And the Chiefs versus Titans in that game, if you look at the box score, you would have thought that the Chiefs blew out Titans. I think they had over 500 yards of offense. Mahomes on his own had over 500 yards of offense. Oh my gosh, that's insane. And the Titans only had about 250 yards of total offense. The Chiefs had, I think, about 20 first downs. I think it was 26. The Titans had like 9 first downs. And still the Titans hung in the game. That's how you know they're a well-coached team. They can pull things out of their rear ends like that. So I was very impressed with the Chiefs' ability to keep fighting and not quit. Another thing that intrigued me about this game was just the amount of times that Coach Reid went for it on fourth down. I'm very aggressive. I like aggressive offenses, aggressive game plans where you go for it on fourth down frequently. And Andy Reid did that in the game. Every time he went for it on fourth down, I was in agreement with it. I liked his aggressive strategy, except for one time. It was in overtime with about 4 or 5 minutes left, and he chose to go for it on 4th and 1.5 yards. He was well within field goal range. At that point in time in the game, the Chiefs defense had shown that the Titans were not going to be able to move the ball on that defense. The Chiefs had figured it out. They were stuffing Derrick Henry. They had figured out Malik Willis. He wasn't able to do anything in the second half. And instead of trying to kick an easy field goal, granted, Butker missed an extra point and he missed an easy chip-in field goal. But instead of going for the field goal and taking the lead, he decided to go for it on fourth down. And I thought that was a little bit risky. I would have liked to have seen him kick the field goal there, take the lead, and make the Titans offense do something they hadn't done in the entire second half of that game, and that was move the ball against the Chiefs defense. And instead, he went for it, and thank goodness he got it, because who knows what had happened in the game had they not picked it up. But overall, I liked his decision-making. However, on fourth down, that last one didn't sit quite right with me. Lastly, I thought that the Chiefs' offense was fairly stagnant throughout the game. It took a Herculean effort from Mahomes to move the ball against the Titans' defense. Granted, they do have a good defense, but they weren't world beaters by any means. The Chiefs have moved the ball effectively against better defenses. For instance, Tampa Bay, San Francisco. For whatever reason, the Titans just seem to have the Chiefs' number. Coach Reid going in this game was 1-4 in the regular season versus the Titans. He's now 2-4. Awesome that he got the win. But they just had a hard time. They struggled throughout the game against the Titans, and moving the ball just felt like an uphill battle all game long. I think the Chiefs offense could have done better. I think Coach Reid could have had a better game plan where the team could have had more success. But in the end, they pulled out a win against a tough opponent, a team that was leading their division, a team that's likely to make the playoffs. And if they get hot, if Tannehill gets healthy and he puts together a few good games, they could be a team that could knock some folks off in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised. They've got a good head coach. They've got a good unit of hard-nosed players. And I like that Titans team. I like what they bring to the table. They're really a quarterback away from being a major problem. As is, because of all of that, I think that Coach Reid deserves an 81 out of 100 for the game last Sunday versus the Titans, which nets him a respectable B-. What do you think Coach Reid should have graded out in the game? Do you think a B- is too harsh? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's good? What do you think about the Titans game? What do you think about Trent McDuffie? What do you think about those 45 coverage snaps where he hasn't even been targeted once? Do you think he is going to be a major impact player down the stretch? I want to say that in 2019 and 2021, when the Chiefs defense had a drastic drop in points per game allowed, they brought in new players both those seasons. In 2019, it was Terrell Suggs. In 2021, last season, it was Melvin Ingram. And I think in 2022, it's going to be Trent McDuffie. He's going to be the guy that comes in and makes a difference. I mentioned a lot of that in my last video. Make sure you go back and check it out if you haven't watched it. But let us know what you think. Make sure that you like and subscribe if you like what you see here. Comment. I'll read them. Maybe next week you'll get the fan shout out. Aside from that, really appreciate y'all. I'm so blessed to be here at RGR Football. This is Gary McKenzie, host of Gridiron Lines. Take it easy, and I'll catch you later. This is Gary signing out.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.